You're listening to the Sales Chameleon Podcast. Smarter sales, stronger growth, simplified.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Sales Chameleon Podcast, where selling smarter starts. I'm your host, Heather Coggins, and if you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, holy cow, we were totally on the same wavelength, that was great, only to, then later realize that you actually completely misunderstood their point. Or maybe even, someone seemed just way too direct in a conversation that you were having and you thought, geez, what an asshole. Are they mad at me? Spoiler alert, they probably weren't. And so today what I'm going to be doing is really unpacking how perception, specifically as it relates to social styles, can really play tricks on us, especially in sales and everyday interactions. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Before I learned the skills of being able to identify and really understand that there were different ways that humans prefer to communicate, I used to kind of think that social styles were a lot like personality types, right? Pretty fixed and very, very rarely, if ever, changing. Right? And, as I kind of just navigated through life, as I, developed new skills, I started realizing it's really more about what people see in us. And let's be honest, what people see isn't always the full story, right?
Yep.
So I want to really dive into how perception can be skewed and why understanding this is extremely critical, especially for having that effective communication and selling smarter with your prospects and your customers. And so what I want to go ahead and do is run through a very quick tour of what the 4 social styles are, and then talk through some relatable real-life comparisons for each. So your 4 social styles are your drivers, your expressives, your amiables, and your analyticals. And I'm going to dive into each of these a lot more in future episodes. But for now, just think of those drivers as, the person who's going to send you a text that just says, okay, right? No emojis, no punctuation, just okay. And they're not being rude, they're just drivers, okay? They want results, they don't want any of the fluff, they don't feel like emojis are necessary. In fact, they feel like they're extremely unnecessary. And so those are going to be your drivers. With your expressives, these are going to be your idea machines, okay? They're the ones that are going to be brainstorming 5 solutions to a problem that you didn't even know you had. And so if you've ever been in a meeting where someone says, hey, what if we tried this wild idea? That's going to tend to reflect that you're speaking with an expressive. Now, your amiables are going to be the team players of the group, okay? They're going to text you just to see how you're doing, and they'll probably say something like, hey, just checking in. How are you doing? And they're not just being polite. They genuinely want to know. And then finally, we've got our analyticals. So think of that friend who, is always triple checking the bill at a restaurant, not because they don't trust you, but just because they love accuracy. They love details, they love data. That's our analyticals. And so the kicker with all of this is, we think that we're reading someone's personality, but what we're really seeing is their behavior. And their behavior might just be them adapting to you. Maybe there's someone who's ultra versatile, right? They have a high tolerance, I guess, or a high understanding of versatility. And that may not necessarily be their true social style. They may just be adapting. So most of us at some point have seen that picture of the iceberg, right? The one where only a small part is visible above the water while the much larger portion is hidden below. And so that part above water represents those things that we can see, right? Someone's tone, someone's body language, their communication style. But below the surface are those things we don't see or hear, right? So their motivations, any internal struggles they may be dealing with, past experiences, or even their efforts to adapt to us in the moment. And that's where it starts getting tricky, right? So instead of diving deeper to understand the reality, we tend to make inferences based on that tiny little visible tip of the iceberg. And so if we think about it, if you're only focusing on what you see or what you hear, you might completely end up misjudging someone's social style or even their intentions. And so For example, let's just say, maybe you assume someone's directness means that they're a driver when in reality, they're an expressive trying to keep things concise because they think that's what you prefer. Okay. And so without looking below the surface, we really risk misunderstanding and ultimately miscommunicating. And so the problem with misreading those social styles is, if you misread someone's social style, you're just going to completely risk missing the mark, okay? And so if you think about a time when maybe you thought someone was mad at you because they were quiet, but really maybe they were just an analytical and they just needed that time to think and process, okay? And so, if I kind of give you, a personal story, I once pitched to a client who seemed super chill, amiable vibes, right? I went all in on relationship building only to find out they were actually a driver who just wanted me to cut to the chase. And so that meeting ended fast and I really had to, do some soul searching from that initial conversation and figure out how to pivot so that I didn't completely ruin that relationship. And so when we talk about the importance of being able to do that, being able to pivot and being able to adapt, that's really when the magic happens, is when you realize social styles aren't static, okay? That quiet analytical can go full expressive in the right situation. And when it comes to you can be, very versatile and adapt to those situations as well. But you have to know what you're looking for. There was a point in time when I worked with a team where the manager was a driver and the assistant manager was an amiable, okay? Once they understood each other's styles, their communication went from stressful to seamless. Like at first, they were just talking right past each other because they didn't really understand. They thought that the one person didn't understand, but really they just prefer to communicate in different ways. And so it all came down to meeting each other where they were, right? And so that's what you want to be able to do as well, is meet your customers and your prospects where they are. And so as we start kind of bringing this episode to a close, I want you to remember, above all else, right? Perception is reality, but it's not the whole picture, okay? So observe, but don't assume. Secondly, make sure you're practicing versatility. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more in future episodes. But if someone seems direct, try mirroring that, okay? But stay authentic. If you come across someone who's more of that big picture thinker, go there with them, right? And then finally, be curious, okay? Ask questions and ask them in an open-ended format, because that's really going to allow them to share as much as possible. And the better you understand someone's style, the better you can then adapt and the better your results are going to be, okay? And so as an actionable item for you and something you can kind of take away to start practicing, sometime this week, pay attention to how people are interacting with you. What behaviors are you seeing, right? And what might they mean? And then take note of that and see if you can make some adjustments where you feel it's necessary to see if that helps shift the conversation in a more positive tone, okay? Otherwise, that is going to be a wrap for today's episode of the Sales Chameleon podcast. And remember, perception is huge, and understanding how social styles shape communication can really make all the difference. So remember, what you see above the surface is just the beginning, and you really need to dig down deeper to truly understand those motivations and understand where you need to adapt. Because when you're able to shift your approach and become more versatile, that's really where the magic happens. Okay, and so if this episode got you thinking differently about how you connect with others, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button so that you're never missing an opportunity to grow your sales game. Until next time, stay curious, stay versatile, keep selling smarter, and I will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Sales Chameleon podcast.